There was something else that happened in that game that I'm sure you took a lot of interest to. It was in the first half, and Alice Morgan went up for a header and fell down hard and was on the field for a while. For those that don't know, Taylor's career basically came to an end in soccer because of concussions. You've been a huge advocate of making sure that soccer takes the concussion problem in the game much more seriously, especially on a stage like this. What were you thinking when you saw Alex Morgan down on the field? Did you think she might have sustained a concussion there?
Yeah, Trey, it's one, my immediate reaction was chuckling because all of our listeners here on Golic and Wingo and a lot of the listeners on ESPN radio and quite honestly in American media think concussions is only an American football, a gridiron football problem, and it's exponentially not. Quite frankly, if you look at it, women, and this is science, not me talking, they sustain concussions differently and more frequently because of certain things genetically, and yet FIFA looks at this with the blind eye. They don't even look at it. What was the protocol yesterday? You guys tell me what was the protocol. If every neurologist and every doctor is telling us that you need at least 7 minutes to assess a concussion, was Alex Morgan assessed for 7 minutes?
No.
No, absolutely not. And yet we want to sit there and say, oh, no, soccer's making some huge headway, no pun intended. There's a protocol involved. We're changing the game. No, you're not. It's completely, it's ridiculous. It's pathetic. And unless the United States Soccer Federation jumps ahead of the game because they need to lead the charge on this, then we're going to be talking about an injury. I mean, look at the 2014 World Cup final in the men. Christoph Kramer had a concussion, comes over and he says to Captain Bastian Schweinsteiger, oh, yeah, the score's 5-5. It was 0-0 18 minutes into the game. Like, yes. I just don't – FIFA's pathetic. They're pathetic. There's no leadership whatsoever. And yet all of us on social media, radio, and TV here in America think it's a football problem. Get out of here. It's every sport has this concussion conundrum, and FIFA could lead the charge because men and women play that sport. That's the most important part to this, is that they could exponentially change education, awareness, because women play the sport as much as men, and yet they don't want to do anything unless it comes in a brown envelope, which maybe I'll send them a brown envelope.
Yeah, listen, that was really strong, and I'm glad you said that because literally as I was watching the game yesterday, when I saw her lying on the field sort of blinking with those eyes, you were the first person I thought of, and you have been a strong advocate about the necessary changes needed, and we just didn't see it yesterday.
No, Trey, it's real easy. You can have a head injury substitution. Right? So that player, Alex Morgan, comes off. You assess her for 10 minutes. You can put a player onto the field. If Alex Morgan is deemed to be fine, she re-enters the play. That sub comes off. It doesn't count. And then if you really want to change it and tell coaches to stay out of our way as medical professionals, if there's a head injury sub, that doesn't count against the 3. And if you cheat, you're fined millions of dollars. And I guarantee you everyone will follow it because the number one issue with soccer, you only get 3 subs, guys. So every coach and every technical staff will say, it's very difficult to do this. I actually presented that to FIFA in 2015, and I got crickets. And then I hear late last year after the World Cup final, hey, can you resend that? Really? That was 4 years ago. So it's just they don't really want to address it. They just don't.
And Taylor, I hear it from that side too, but we always know we're always fighting the battle as players when it comes to injuries in general of that line between wanting to report and wanting to be on the field. And we know, it, like you said, in American football, it's become such an issue that players are acutely aware of it. When it comes to soccer, is this something that on the player side we might hear someone speak up of? I know you're very passionate about it. Are current players as concerned about this issue and the way it's being treated as former players like yourself?
Junior, absolutely. I would say over the last 3-4 years, I've gotten, in whether it's NFL, NHL, actually a couple basketball players and a ton of soccer players, because of the education and awareness, they're going to make better decisions. This is why last year with my foundation, we had 4.3 million kids under the age of 11 take the Think Taylor Pledge. And the reason why I say that, that's not plugging my foundation. What it is telling everyone is if I educate the 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, Junior, by the time those athletes are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, they're going to make better decisions because I'm already starting to hear that within the NFL. I'm already starting to hear that in college football. The problem is the injury is not black and white. It's so gray, and that's why you've got to help the athletes, but more importantly, you got to help the medical professionals to, in that moment, to take the pressure away of the Alex Morgan being in the game. Does that make any sense? Because you know that doctor or trainer or athletic trainer comes on the field, they know they're looking at Alex Morgan. They know they're looking at their leading goal scorer. So they know they're going to assess that injury a little differently than if it was Crystal Dunn, for lack of a better comparison. And that's why we need to help all parties. It can't just be the athletes. But, Junior, to answer your question in a nutshell, the athletes are more educated, more aware. Now we don't have excuses that all of us on this phone call, on this radio show right now, we had excuses because we weren't educated. We weren't aware. They're more educated now. They're making better decisions because of that. And ultimately, I think the tide's going to turn. But I want the federations and the organizations to lead the charge so it's a little bit easier, and then it doesn't become this tug of war between a players' union and the ownership and the leadership and all of that. Otherwise, then you're in this hamster wheel and nothing's getting accomplished.